Okay, can people hear me? Or I think we're nearly back. If I could ask you to come find your seat, we will begin. And in the interest of my successor moderators, I will tell you that we're about a minute behind. So we just, I want to set a good precedent for future days. Welcome back. Thanks for all of your good work today. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Javier, but before we do, and in a minute, we'll come back to our group secretaries to give a report, but I'm going to throw you a change. I said that each secretary would speak to one question, and while that is true, I'm now going to assign you a question so that we hear from a variety. You can fill out the evaluation later. So for the blue group, I'd like an answer to question number 1. For the secretary from the green group, if you could give an answer to question number 2. For the secretary from the white group, if you could give an answer to the question number 3. This is creating quite a controversy. From the orange group, if you could give an answer to the question number 1. And the red group, if your secretary could give an answer to the question number 2.
Yes, they were answering that somebody told them to choose the question they wanted.
They were going to report on one question.
We should follow that.
Por tanto, quedamos que...
Lo que
After consultation, I've been overruled. It really wasn't my decision in the first place, but I'll take the blame. Secretary will report on whatever question the secretary wants to report on. And if we trust that the Holy Spirit's at work, we'll hear from all 3 questions. Perhaps. Well, that was an interesting way to begin the ending of the day. One quick practical reminder, at the end of this session, this interpretive piece is something that you will need to turn in. So with that, I'll turn it over to Javier.
Okay.
Well, we're going to try and give some data as to today's activities. Data that might help us contextualize the activity that has been carried out. 592 different web sessions have taken place following streaming. So we don't know for sure, but we can imagine that in some sessions there can be 1 person, but in other sessions, in the streaming following, there might be 3, for example. So if we were to count 2 persons per streaming session, we could say that more than 1,000 persons have actually been following our discussions through streaming. Out of these connections, out of these 592 sessions, 352 took place in Spain, which shouldn't surprise us. The microphone is not really working, is it? It comes and goes. So, should I leave this and use another microphone, maybe? Okay. So, it's logical then on the basis of the time slots. But see, Brazil 59, the United States 37, the Philippines 21. The merit is incredible because their time, as you know, is very different, yeah? So what it really represents a very high level of interest. Argentina 11, Colombia 10, India 10, Italy 8, Australia 7, Chile 7, and then it continues. We have other countries with smaller figures. So we have problems with the sound, I'm sorry. So I am challenging you in a way, and that is, why don't you get your teams, the people with you in your schools, in your apostolic works, and maybe in this way get a different list tomorrow? In the forum that is annexed to the streaming session, we have had 65 interventions. That is a discussion forum that's not dynamized or coordinated, but there have been 65 different interventions. So this activity that we are generating is really very important. We are exerting a great influence with our discussion sessions here, and we are including then many people that belong to us, but not here. Regarding the activity in social networks, in fact, we have 300 followers in Twitter, and today 20 have registered for the first time. 44 Twitter interventions using the Sipei hashtag. Some people used 5, used the Sipei seminar hashtag. So please let us all try and concentrate on the Sipei hashtag. It's the one you have actually here on the posters. And I'm saying that because some people got mixed up and used this other hashtag, Sipei seminar. So the hashtag for Twitter is Sipei. And then regarding Facebook, 587 total likes, so people linking to us, and 61 are new today. Okay, so our activity today has had an influence, and look what an important item of information. Since October the 28th to today, 12,832 individual Facebook pages have linked to the Facebook website of Sipei. This is very important information. It means 12,000, or exactly 12,832 persons from Thursday up to today have linked up to our Sipei Facebook site. As it's the first time, in fact, that we're doing the activity in this way, it's very important that we also realize what the impact is and the influence of a seminar with 80 people. On the one hand, 80 people followed through streaming, Facebook and Twitter. Well, that becomes something much greater, and so then the influence is much, much more. Then here comes a summary of our direct presential activity. We have had 1 presentation, 2 experiences, 30 minutes for personal reflection, and 135 minutes of group discussion, no less. And in these 135 minutes of group discussion, 58 interventions were individual, on average 2.3 minutes per intervention. This we thank you for. We're really grateful because you were very good about not reaching the 3-minute max that we gave you. And although, however, in some cases, some of the persons repeated an intervention, but if we were not to count repetitions, this represents 75%. Okay? So 58 interventions are 75% of the 77 persons present in the room. And I really think this is a success. It's been so active. We thank you for this very dynamic discussion session. It's been very interesting. And we would like to make sure that the people who didn't speak today will do so tomorrow. So 5 different working groups with 3 different questions. They have worked on these for 1 hour. And to add, of course, all the conversations taking place during breakfast and coffee breaks and lunch. So all this is the discussion generated and carried out during today.
Time we'd like to hear from the group secretaries to give their summaries. And since the order in which I presented it earlier was so unpopular, rather than dictate a color to present first, would someone like to volunteer? Okay, from the orange group. And please introduce yourself again as you begin.
Soy Andrés.
I am Andrés Aguirre from Argentina, a Jesuit, Argentina, Uruguay. Well, I'm going to take the first question. And, what we worked on was this more universal vision or insight of respect, integration, adaptation of our spirituality, of our identity, taking into account the contextualization, times, places, and people that Saint Ignatius talks about. So then the idea of actually opening bridges and not only defend what is our own terrain, that eventually is a very narrow attitude and becomes sterile. And then, of course, we have the logic of contemplation to reach love. God works everywhere. Everywhere, on everything, in the different realities, in the different types of religious expression, in the challenges of secularization. There we have the challenge of finding God there. So, going back to this then, how to bring something new to what is new in itself, and not just become a group enclosed within itself with the fear of losing identity. Thank you.
Is there another color or shade that would like to go? Yes, red.
We also focused Jim Bopp from Phoenix, Arizona. We also focused on the first question, acknowledging that we have a history of appreciating multiculturalism. It's deeply integrated into the Society of Jesus and its missions, all the way back to Xavier's experience in Asia. This arises from the fact that we acknowledge that desiring the common good is a universal impulse. So for that reason, because God is the God of surprises, we can look at these opportunities to find new facets of who God is and what God desires for us in and through this diversity. But diversity can also bring tension. And thankfully, Jesuit spirituality is a spirituality of tensions. We have a tradition of Ignatian indifference as individuals, and we should also integrate this into our institutional lives so that we can operate out of a real freedom in order to meet people where they are and to find God in all things. This is particularly important when we are in situations, which are probably majority situations, where we are discerning between multiple goods and not simply between good and evil. A condition of this is time for real examine to happen at both the personal and institutional levels.
Thank you. Yes.
No nos podemos...
Purple?
Yes. Amaya de San Sebastián.
Amaya from San Sebastian. We were talking, it was kind of like a synthesis between the first and the third question. First of all, we were aware in the group that we can't demand from ourselves what we can't give. We can't expect from educators what we can't give. So, if as educators we are conscious, then we will contribute towards our students being persons of conscience as well. And what we said is to develop the conscience of our students, we have to develop as well a critical and creative thought. They would both go together, conscience, critical thought, and creative thought. And this led us to define the fifth faith, or the fifth C, which is creativity, to be added to the other four. And so then we shouldn't look outside of time or outside of curricula, but rather in the time that we have with our students, with our curricula, there is where we should develop new methodologies, very creative methodologies that would lead us to develop all this, the critical and creative thought with conscience. So we should foster new ways of working. And this would entail as well the development of a training plan for creativity in educators, who will be those fostering creativity in students. But, we can go back to the Ratio Studiorum and see that, in fact, we are recovering the magic of everyday life, of school life, and to reflect on it all. To reflect as well on the signs of identity generated within our schools and what ways we must develop so that, essentially, we are more conscious and we don't have students just sitting in front of us, but rather having them next to us, and in that way we accompany them in the development of their conscience.
And we'll go to the blue group here.
Jenny Hickey from Australia. We were talking about the second question of how it is that we can use our growing World Jesuit School network to establish greater contact and knowledge. Firstly, we very much were of the point that networking has great benefits on a variety of levels for the development of our own awareness, but then we need to take it a little bit further and deeper to another level of consciousness to become aware of the issues that our education system is dealing with across the world. We talked about networking at different levels, so at an international level, at a national level and a local level. So once again, we can become aware of the schools, the education systems within our different geographical areas that can help develop our own awareness of what we're trying to do as we educate in the Jesuit network. We talked about our networks being energising and being personally formative. But we did talk about the fact that they take time and effort, and we need to be patient with developing those. We also talked about we're here as a group of schools and education systems that are dealing with certain socio-economic groups of people, but we also made the point that Jesuit Refugee Services is educating tens of thousands of people across the world, and we may benefit from including them in our network. The same with Fei Alegria and Cristo Rey schools. And also some of the schools in some of our poorer areas, such as Cambodia, that is just beginning a school. Is there some way that we can support, give support to their own development that would also form our own conscience?
Thank you. I think we have a couple of groups left. Someone in green? Yes. Just one.
We took the first question. We dwelled on this question from three perspectives. The first, what it meant to be loyal to one's identity. Is it culturally? Does it mean to the spiritual exercise? Does it mean loyalty to creation? The second perspective was, how do we remain loyal? And the answers were having a sense of dignity, which is the core of the mystery of incarnation. In the context of diversity, the question was raised, what it means to be in a diversity. Does it mean that one has to accept all the aspects of diversity? Or does it mean that one has to be what he is, no matter what the diversity would imply? We also felt that our identities should be seen in the context of faith. That is, our identity should become a sign, it should become a witness to others. It also means Does it mean a Christian identity? That is our loyalty to the gospel, our way of relation, that is the story of gospel to be articulated in our way of life. Finally, one needs to articulate the experience of God by accompanying ourselves with the student, which is a very important aspect.
I was just about to take a selfie. No, really, I was, but it's okay. Back to Javier.
Ahora,
Well, now that the 5 secretaries have given their presentation, is there anyone of the groups that would like to add something to what has been said or clarify, or is there anything missing or for this seminar? Well, excellent. Let me remind you, or better said, remind the secretaries of the groups. They're going to be summarizing on one page the work done on the answer to the 3 questions, and we will be using this for today's summary. It'll be an important part. So, what we're going to be doing now is offer you what we call the temporary advance or anticipation of what might be the summary of today's work. So in fact, that will take place tomorrow at 9 o'clock before we start with our second day. But I'm going to give you just a temporary preview, so to speak. It's very temporary and very kind of yeah? But just a short summary of what the work today has been, at least to give us a certain structure. And it could be placed on a transparency that you'll see right now, this slide here. In fact, the starting point is that of the person of conscience, the conscious person, and we have been stating throughout today that we opted not only for academic excellence, but also for human excellence, so totally human. In that sense, we talked about the fact that working in order to educate students to be persons of conscience means to exert an influence on the one hand, and it means to move affections on the other, very important. It means to help and to accompany. And finally, some interventions mentioned the fact that this should be assessed or evaluated. So this is, or these are the essential issues that have to do with the person of conscience. And last but not least, throughout the day, we have been talking about the fact that on the basis of some experiences, people talked about devoting some minutes, that is to steal, in inverted commas, some minutes from the very strict schedules and timetables in order to carry out an examen or some activity that will concentrate the work of this person of conscience. We also had a lot to say about the fact that in all the academic activity that takes place in the classrooms, all the work of the person of conscience should be reflected at all times and worked on always. And concerning this, the discussion had to do with this tension, insofar as on the one hand we base everything on the Ignatian identity of our schools, but then on the other our schools also open the door to diversity. And with the contribution of the group's work that has had a lot to do with all the issues here, I'm sure that tonight we will eventually have a very good summary that we will be trying to give you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Well, now we are coming to the end of today's work. It's been a very intense day. We've been here from 9 o'clock. We've come from many different locations, and our suggestion right now is to close the session now at 6 o'clock sharp. Do remember, please, as you leave the room, to give the simultaneous interpretation device back. We will have some free time to 6:30, and at 6:30 we will be celebrating Eucharist in the main basilica that's next to the cave. To go there, remember, you have to take the lift on the left, go down to -1, and then walk to the left. It's indicated. It's the main basilica there next to the cave. So 6:30 we will be there. 6:30. After that, we will be having dinner at 7:30, 19:30, and social time at 8:30. It's quite important that at 8:30 we leave the dining room tables free, because that way the team can tidy and get everything ready for breakfast. So then at 8:30 we can go up to the third floor. From 8:30 to 10 o'clock tonight, for any of you that might wish to be there, we will have time to get to know each other better, to exchange opinions, and just be in a more informal atmosphere. There will be some drinks and coffee. So it'll be social time for us all to share. So 6:30 Eucharist, 7:30 dinner, 8:30 social time, remember, on the third floor. Also, a very technical and practical item I must tell you about. In the first and second floor, the two ends of the corridor, there are some rooms with a washing machine and a dryer, and also detergent for you to be able to wash your clothes. So if you need to use them, please do. And there is also an iron if you have to iron your clothes. So you can actually wash, dry, and iron. Domestic work, as we know, is also very important. So thank you very much indeed for what you contributed today. Thank you to our chairperson. I'm sure he will add something. Do you want to add something?
Sure. Okay. Okay. Good.
So thank you very, very much indeed to David, our chairperson. He's been splendid. Thank you so much, David.